Welcome to the teaching ministry of Lifetime Guarantee. We've been presenting the message of freedom and grace in Christ for over 30 years. The legacy of the ministry spans every state in the U.S. and reaches into over 140 countries internationally. We're glad that by listening, you're joining the extended family of Lifetime Guarantee. Two things before we begin. First, after you've listened to this teaching, we encourage you to share this MP3 with your friends. Second, your financial contribution will assist us in making more of the ministry available to others. This is so important. You can make a donation at lifetime.org. That's lifetime.org.
People get the idea that if you've married the right person, that you ought to have this fantastic romantic feeling the rest of your life with her or with him. In fact, a lot of folks think we promise that at the wedding ceremony of love, honor, and obey, and all this stuff. That isn't what you promise. You can't promise a person that you'll feel exactly the same way at age 50 that you did at age 23. I mean, before you got married, a couple of weeks ahead of that time, you were a basket case, man, right? I mean, you were so high that you weren't worth a flip on your job or anywhere else because you just had your mind on, oh, how wonderful this is going to be married. How'd you like to live that way till you're 60 years old? Man, it'd blow you away. So you couldn't, you'd go tilt inside, right? You can't live like that. The thing that we're promising is this commitment kind of love. It's not based on a feeling, but you hear the songs, the popular song. The feeling is gone. And so I'm going to leave you because I'd be a phony if I stayed here with you because the feeling's gone. So I'm going to get my 18-wheeler and go search for the feeling again. You see? It's bound to be down there at that truck stop somewhere. And now, isn't that the way it is, you see? Looking for the feeling, and that's really not the way it is. Let me tell you this too, brother and sister. This is something that God has just shown Annabelle and me. Let me illustrate it with a point. Think about a pastor that I counseled one time, and his flesh pattern was that he had a low sense of self-worth. Now, how can you build yourself up and make yourself feel worth more? You can hobnob with well-to-do people. And so he told his wife he would like to have her make friends with the doctors' wives and lawyers' wives and so forth in the church. And then maybe they would have a better chance of getting invited to the parties that these well-to-do Christians held, you see. Now, that's his flesh trip. So he's laying this big trip on his wife. But guess what? Guess what her flesh is? Her flesh pattern is introverted and feelings of inferiority. And so what her flesh tends to do is keep her locked in the house with the shades drawn and the doors bolted, you see, and never get out and interact with people, let alone the wealthy class in the church. Now look at this. Look what God did to these two people. He put them in a marriage where each other's flesh would bug the other person's flesh. They were a thorn in the flesh. Now listen to me. Thorn in the soul? No. Thorn in the spirit? Thorn in the what? Flesh. And the Apostle Paul was given a thorn in the what? Flesh. See? I'm not talking about body, although it could be a physical illness. I'm not denying that. But you see, Paul tells us why he was given that thorn. And it was in his old ways, because what was the purpose of thorn? To keep him from being proud. See, he had proud flesh. See that? So, dear brother, dear sister, this may be a factor in your marriage. And if you bail out, you're bailing out on your thorn. And you need that to help you give no opportunity to the flesh.
So, what we're saying is that marriage cannot be based on looks, on feelings, or on circumstances, right?
Yeah, those will help.
Yeah, but You weren't supposed to say that. The looks can be gone at 11 o'clock tonight on the way home when we have a car wreck.
That's right.
And my face can be all scarred up.
Yeah.
Or with a stroke, or with age.
Yeah.
The looks can be gone. And the feelings, a bad hamburger can affect your feelings, right?
That's right.
And circumstances, you know, the bungalow with the picket fence, the nice car, the obedient child, little surplus money in the bank, and, the most important of all, a mate who will meet my needs. Mm-hmm. Those fluctuate.
That's right.
You cannot base your commitment in marriage on that.
That's right.
So what we're saying is that the marriage commitment is based on the position that you have taken or the position that your spouse has taken. Somebody wrote us a letter the other day and made this statement that I think is just really good. She said, "We have become aware that our relationship is to last until death parts us, and that our happiness depends on our giving to each other and not expecting to receive." Let me read that again. We have become aware that our relationship is to last until death parts us, and that our happiness depends on our giving to each other and not expecting to receive.
So then it's not love that holds the marriage together.
No.
It's the opposite. It's marriage that holds the love together. Mm-hmm. The model is the Hebrews. Now just think about it. There's no courtship with Hebrews. 2 Jews took their daughter and 2 Jews took their son, and they said, "You will marry." And they said, "Yes, ma'am, yes, sir." And they married. And it was the commitment to the union under God, and God put the love into the relationship. So we've got to get this thing straight, people, that it's not some sort of a fuzzy feeling that binds me to Annabelle, although we got those too. But that's a fringe benefit. Hey, there have been times we haven't had that fuzzy feeling, haven't there?
Right.
But commitment, you see, is what's going to hold us together under the grace of God, right?
So the way I should verbalize it, honey, is this. And this is a play on words, so listen carefully.
All right.
It is not, "I love Bill. He is my husband." That's making it backwards, right? It is, "Bill is my husband, and I will love him."
Yeah. That sounds so clinical. Mm-hmm. Really does, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. But it's not, is it? It's just that our flesh has been attuned to this system around here, mm-hmm. right? But by walking in the Spirit, that does not become a clinical statement, but it becomes a very godly truth that can really liberate us and set us free from this thing.
Our next and last category now is communication. And to start this off, we're going to practice communication. And unless you do exactly what I tell you to, it's going to take all evening, and we can't do that. So you listen carefully. I'm going to give you instructions. Really want you to do exactly what I tell you to, because you'll ruin the effect if you don't. Okay? Now you're going to need a partner, so it doesn't matter if you know them intimately or not. We're not going to do anything risque. So choose you a partner and stand up, would you please?
Lay all your stuff down.
Yeah, lay your stuff down. Okay, now listen. Listen to the instructions. And remember, children, do exactly what I tell you to. Nothing more, nothing less, just exactly what I tell you to. Now you have a line that you're going to repeat. And this is the line. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're... 4 words. I'm glad you're here. Let's practice. I'm glad you're here. Okay, now then. But we're going to do that 4 times, and we're going to do it differently each time. Please do exactly what I tell you to. First time we're going to do it, this is the way we're going to do it. You may not look at the person. You may not put any inflection in your voice. No eye contact, no inflection, no smile, no touching. You just look down at the floor and take turns saying that. Now, don't laugh there. You're going to be tempted to giggle. Don't. Just do what I told you to. Okay, go. Oh, I didn't see a single person not do it right. You did well. Okay, second time. This time you may look at the person, but don't smile. Look dour. Okay? And say it again. Don't, wipe it off. Don't smile. Just look at the person and say it again. Great, great. Okay, third time. Third time now. Look at the person. Say with great inflection and a very pleasant look, I'm glad you're here, but nothing else. Just that. Okay. Now then, we're going to communicate. Last time. I want you to have eye contact, smile with great inflection, and I want you to make contact with that person. If you want to, hug them, shake hands, something, and say to them, I am so glad you're here. Thank you. You performed well. I'm going to start this section by sharing with you just a portion of a story written by Will Carleton, a poet. And the story tells about a young pioneer man who fell in love with a city-bred girl, wooed her, won her hand, married her, and then took her to the frontier, to a very mountainous, desolate region. He tells us in there that she had the heart to do all the work that was there for a pioneer woman to do, but she was too frail to do it. And so she couldn't enter into all the activities there, and she got awfully lonesome. He says there were some Indians around, but they didn't take the place of all the activities that she had known, but she never complained. She tried so hard to do just everything she could to help her husband. He would leave early in the morning, go out to the fields, clear and everything like that, then come home late at night. Well, on this particular night, as he says, he was just too tired to feel first rate, and the dinner didn't sit just right. And he went out to feed the cows, and the cows were gone. And he wanted to blame somebody, so he stomped back into the house, and he said, "What have you been doing all day? Looks to me like you could at least watch the cows. They've wandered off. I don't know where they've gone. I've got to go and find them. Looks like the heft of all our life on me must fall." And the minute he said it, he knew he shouldn't have. Not that she retorted at all, but just that he knew that he had hurt her terribly. But he stalked out. He finally found the cattle, brought them back. Their evening was very stilted. The next morning, when he went to work, he left without his goodbye kiss and went on to the field and worked awfully hard through the morning. Lunchtime came. He opened his lunch pail, and she had put in a lot of little extra things. And on the very top were some pansies, tender and pleasant thoughts they meant. And he realized that she was saying, I'm sorry. I know his heart just sang. And he said, I'm going to hurry up and finish, and I'm going to go home early, and I'm going to ask her to forgive me. And he looked over, and the sky was getting ominously black. And he said, besides that, a storm's coming, and that's a good excuse to go home early. So he finished as quickly as he could and raced home, so eager to see his wife and to say, please forgive me. And he rushed into the cabin, but she was gone. I love the phrase that he says there. He says, my house had lost its soul. She was gone. And she had left a note. And she said, the cattle have wandered off again, I fear, but I think I know where to find them, dear. And I'm sure that I can soon find them, and please make up with love the strength I lack, and have kind words for me when I get back. No sooner had he finished reading that until this storm just broke in all its fury. The sky was just, the sun was obliterated, and sheets of rain began to come down, and the wind was blowing. And suddenly he realized the import of his wife being gone. And so he ran out to search for her. But all of his frenzied searching and fevered calling were to no avail, and in the dark of the night he came back to the cabin again, and she still wasn't there. And so he went back out again, searching for her. And in the early dawn, he found his way back to the clearing again. And as he got there, he heard the cowbells tinkling. And he thought, brave soul, she let the cows lead her home. And sure enough, the cabin door was ajar. And he rushed in. He says, you're home. And she had come home, but she was gone again. She was lifeless on the floor, too frail for the battle that she had entered. Will Carleton ends that poem in this way. He says, small boys, flying kites, haul in their white-winged birds. You can't do that when you're flying words. Careful with fire is good advice, we know, but careful with words is 10 times doubly so. Thoughts unexpressed may fall to earth yet dead, but God himself can't bring them back once they're said. That's communication.
That's communication. Well, what is communication? Well, we just had an exercise in communication a while ago. Notice what happened to you as you escalated toward the warmer and warmer thing that you knew was finally coming. That's a wonderful thing, isn't it? To communicate love and acceptance to one another that way. Well, let's give some illustrations of communication.
Okay. A look from the choir at your little boy that's sitting on the second row and is misbehaving. That's communication.
Yeah.
A stiffening of your body in bed, wife, when your husband reaches over and touches you. That's communication.
Getting on the church bus when you're a sophomore in high school to go to the big retreat. And as you go down the aisle, there are single seats available, and this person says, this seat's taken, this seat's taken, this seat's taken, this seat's taken. And so you go back over the wheel well, and when you turn around and sit down in an empty seat, you notice other kids are coming on and sitting in those seats, and no one tells them this seat's taken. That's communication.
Taking a pie to a family that's going through a time of grief or sorrow, not saying a word, that's communication.
You're pleasant to other people. I see the way you interact with them, but you're not pleasant with me. That's communication.
Remembering the Super Bowl game and date for months, but not remembering my birthday, that's communication.
Yeah. Or just silence. Silence communicates. And silence is one of the best ways to give the devil opportunity to really have a heyday, because he can use the flesh then to put whatever he wants to, whatever concept he wants to put in to the other person. I think of a married couple where this man just never talked. He just never talked. He'd come home and just sit and watch TV and so forth. And so here came along Mr. Wonderful one day, and so he began to say kind things to the wife. Your eyes are just so pretty. And your hair, you are an attractive woman. And she liked it. And it put her in a great, tempting position, didn't it? Silence. That's communication. Well, we did a questionnaire one time, and we passed it out to hundreds of people. One of the questions on there was, what one thing would you say has been the greatest hindrance to your having an effective marriage? 39 out of 100 people said this: communication. 39 out of 100.
They say that a wife and husband, day by day in a very casual way, can build between themselves a gigantic wall. A wall so thick that you cannot with ease speak through it, and you just can't see across because it's too tall. Its nearness frightens them, but they seem powerless to tear the bulk away, and each one wishes that they knew some word to say, some magic word that would destroy the wall. But because they do not communicate, it does not fall. Oh, please, let us build a bridge of tenderness between your heart and mine. A bridge of love that's devoid of fear. A bridge through Christ made strong by time. Until we have built so many lovely ties that there just won't be room for that wall to rise.
We make no apology for playing on your emotions with this portion of this lecture. The Lord uses things like this sometimes to get to a person, to motivate that person to break through that wall and tear that thing down and hold a good funeral and let Christ begin to live through it. And then we pray that that'll happen tonight. You know, some women, doll, because they're physically the weaker sex, they resort to using their tongue as a defense. And sometimes those things that are said can stab and cut and hurt. And the devil can continue to recall that to the husband or to the child all the way through the lifetime. You and I have seen that happen so often in a counseling setting, haven't we? Men, it isn't quite cricket to hit your wife, in Christian circles especially, but you can cut her down with words. That's been my biggie. That's what I have been so guilty of over the years, is sarcasm, invective, punishing talk. Some parents, especially the educated ones today, think surely there must be a more civilized way of disciplining your child than using the rod, as the Bible says. And so they resort to word battles. And this old adage, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt me, That's a lie right out of the pits of hell. Physical wounds will heal. But there are people who are adults who are walking around with open, festering sores that have been running for years from things that have been said to them by people that they love and want to please.
Bill and I had to choose the little illustrations that we would use in this portion of this teaching because we know so many. We see they're around us constantly. So he chose one and I chose one. I hope that we can draw the picture for you so that you can see it. Mine took place in Springfield, Missouri. Bill and I were at the airport. I was leaving for the weekend on a conference, and Bill had gone out with me. And we were standing in line waiting to get seat assignments. There was a family standing in front of us, a young man and his mother and 2 or 3 other people. And so we're just this close, you know, standing, and they're talking. That woman, the boy's mother, didn't have one nice thing to say to that young man. I guess we were in line 10 minutes, maybe, honey. She chewed him up one side and down the other. She had nothing good to say to him. He didn't say a word back to her. He'd look at her and his lip would curl a little bit as though he'd like to say something, but he didn't say a word to her. Bill and I were relieved when we got finally to the counter, and they got their passes and went over and sat down, and I got mine and went over and sat down. And so now it's time to board the plane. And at Springfield, you don't have one of these boarding tubes or whatever you call it. You walk out to the plane and then walk up the steps and board the plane. Well, as I told Bill goodbye and then got in line and started walking out there, I found myself right behind this young man. And so, you know, you walk closely, and he was walking up the stairs, and I was right behind him. And when he got to the top of the stairs, he stopped. And he turned around, and of course I was looking at his face, and his eyes darted all around as though he were looking for somebody, and then they stopped on the door that we came out, as though he had decided that there is where this person was. And as I was looking at him, his eyes brimmed up, watered. And he formed 2 words. He didn't speak them, he just formed 2 words, and because I was so close, I saw those 2 words. And so as he was looking, with tears in his eyes, he said, "Bye, Mom." That's communication.
Just last week, we were at our church fixing some transparencies to use for this seminar. And we were in the workroom there, and a man came in. I would say he was probably 70, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. He came in, he said, "I need to use the telephone." Nicely dressed man. And so we helped him. It's one of those things, you know, where you got to push several buttons to get out. And he said, "I've locked my keys in my car, and I need to call my wife." And so he called her, and he said, "Hello, I'm over here at West Cliff Church. I've locked the keys in the car." And I said, South Cliff Church. You know, "I'm over here at South Cliff Church." "Well, I don't know, just come get me." And I said, "Well, I can tell her how to get here." And he says, "Okay." So I said, "Hello, I was just sitting here listening, and do you know where South Cliff Church is?" And she says, "I don't think so." And I began to just, "Oh, I know where that is. Oh, yes." But she says, "But he's got the automatic transmission car, and the only one here is stick shift, and I can't drive a stick shift car." You know. And I said, "She can't drive a stick shift car." And so he comes over and says, "Well, just call somebody. I'm up here stuck with my keys locked in the car. Just get somebody and come on up here." And out he goes. So Annabelle and I, after he leaves, we look and we say, can you believe that? And, married all these years and in that, And so about 5 minutes while he comes back in, he says, I found the keys, they're in my pocket, And I said, well, then you're going to call your wife. He said, yeah, I guess I better call her, So he goes to call, and the line's busy. And I said, well, she's trying to call somebody to get out here and to save her that big trip in the stick shift car, You can interrupt. You can call the operator. Tell her what your problem is, and she'll interrupt the call and tell your wife. And so he did that, and he got his wife. Says, I found my keys, so you don't need to come. And then he turned around to us and he said,
with a different tone of voice.
Oh, yeah. He said, well, I want to thank you folks. I'm sure sorry I put you out. And I just really appreciate you helping me out. That's awful nice of you. And walked out. That's communication, dear brother, dear sister. If we have described you, my brother or my sister, we're describing the flesh. And you're allowing Satan to control you through the flesh, if this is the way you're acting. And you don't have to do that. You can diffuse this self-destruct marriage by letting Christ live his life through you. Well, how would you describe a spirit-filled man, dog? We hear that term so glibly thrown around, a spirit-filled man. How would you describe a spirit-filled man? Well, James gives us some insight. But first of all, let's guess at it. A man of prayer, a great Bible scholar, perhaps, a leader of a great church, a mighty preacher, wins many people to Christ every year. Let's listen to what James says. If any man thinks he is religious, but if he has no control over his own tongue, he's just fooling himself. His religion is worthless.
Remember now that 39 couples out of 100 said that communication was their problem. That's the reason Bill and I are very deliberately trying to get you to see this. Now, I'm going to share something with you now that's very personal. I hope that you'll handle it carefully. Hope you'll accept it. But I think it's one of the most graphic examples of communication, or the lack of communication, that I could share. My dad was a postal worker, and he retired early with a medical retirement. And he and Mother did so many things together. Their lives were very closely interwoven. They lived out in the country on a little acreage, and they'd plow the garden together. They would have picnics. They'd get in the car and drive over to Smithville, take a jug of coffee with them. They just did so many things together. It's April the 14th, 1970. At this point in time, my sis is in the hospital. Now, I want you to understand, I'm not saying anything bad about my mom and dad. Beautiful people. They're both with the Lord. Beautiful people. My sis is in the hospital in Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is about 40 minutes away from Poto. So what Mother and Daddy are doing, they work awfully hard all morning, and then they get cleaned up and they go over and see Betty that afternoon. That's their ritual at this time. Well, on this day, April 14th, they had been working in the garden. It's spring. They've been plowing, moving rocks, big old rocks out of the garden. And it's dinner time, so they quit. Dad goes in and cleans up while Mother's fixing lunch. They eat, and then Mother goes to clean up and Daddy cleans up what few dishes there are. And then he goes out and he pulls his chair over under the shade tree, his very favorite chair, and he sits out on the side lawn while Mother finishes. And when she finishes, she comes to the door and says, Mark, I'm ready. Well, for some reason, Daddy said, I don't believe I'll go this afternoon, Jean. I don't know what thoughts came to Mother, thought something like this. I've worked just as hard as he has all morning. Why should he stay here and relax, and I have to go over? I'm just as tired as he is. I don't know what thoughts were there, but they had an argument. But it ended up with Daddy sitting in the side lawn there and Mother driving to Fort Smith to see Betty. So she visited with Betty, but she's angry, and we have coping mechanisms, don't we? Mother's was shopping. And so on the way home, she stopped to shop, and she bought 2 new pairs of shoes. And then she drove on home. And when she drove into the yard, my dad was still sitting in his favorite chair under the shade tree on the side lawn. But he had had a massive coronary, and he was gone. That's communication. I wonder, husband, how long has it been since you told your wife, I love you. You are so precious to me. How long has it been, husband, since you held your little girl and you looked at her and you said, oh, you're so pretty. I love you. How long, wife, has it been since you communicated to your husband, I love you so much, I'm so proud of you? Or since you've communicated to your son, oh, what a fine young man you are, I'm so proud of you. That's communication. That's communication.
There's such power in uttering little 3-word sentences from the heart. I am sorry. I hurt you. That's my fault. Please forgive me. That can bring such healing. And the power of sin is saying to someone right now, well, I can't do that. I'm not that way. I'm different. The power of sin is saying to somebody else, well, if she would first, that would be different. Or if he would, after all he's done to me, I'm not about to say that to him. And that's the flesh, dear people. You've got to claim that you're dead to that, but alive to God through Jesus Christ, and allow him to live through you to defuse a self-destruct marriage.
We hope you've been encouraged by the teaching ministry of Lifetime Guarantee. You can find similar resources, messages, and articles at lifetime.org. We have a wealth of information on marriage, parenting, depression, overeating, freedom and identity in Christ, as well as men's and women's issues. You'll find a complete catalog at lifetime.org. 2 quick reminders before we conclude. Feel free to share this MP3 with others, especially those you know who might need it. Do so with our encouragement and blessing. And we would sincerely appreciate your financial assistance in making the ministry available to more people. Just go to lifetime.org and you'll find a secure way to support Lifetime Guarantee on the homepage. And finally, we pray God's blessings for you.